Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm Steph.
Hi, Steph. I'm Adrienne.
What inspired you to do that, which could be argued slightly controversial show?
I made a joke about rape with some female friends of mine that um, we all laughed at, and it felt very much like it was a joke about rape coming from a very different angle, with a different angle of satire, not about the act itself, but about the culture that surrounds it,
Right.
and all in the misunderstandings. And we all laughed really hard, if uneasily at first, because we felt like, oh God, what have we done?
Yeah.
Um, and then we sort of kept joking about it, and it felt really funny and really edgy. First and foremost, I could also say it felt sort of like liberating, but I remember feeling mostly like, oh God, that'd be fun to pull off in an audience of people.
Yeah.
And that sort of just went from there.
Yeah.
And then I just started wondering, like, could you make a sort of a comedy about this subject material, and and keep it funny, but also satirical and maybe a bit meaningful.
Yeah.
And I tend to get, when I feel like I've got an idea that could fail really hard, I tend to take that as a reason to work on it. I mean, in some ways, I think it's the same exact key that makes any comedy funny, which is to be like incisive and thoughtful, think it through past the punchline to see like the other possible punchlines, and to be smart about it,
Yeah.
which, serve any joke well.
Yeah.
And in this case, I feel like because it's, loaded with all of this stuff, all the more so, and maybe also it wouldn't hurt the comic, male or female, to clock why this particular joke should be in the set. And so I think for me, like, I don't have any interest in censoring anyone else's reasons for doing any jokes, but for me, a rape joke, or a joke about rape, should be smart, and, like most comedy, maybe go against the grain a bit, like be subversive. I don't find any jokes that make a victim of rape or the celebration of, like, gross expressions of violence and misogyny funny.
Do you
Yeah.
think it's harder for women to speak as freely on stage, um, as opposed to men, or do you think it's about equal?
I feel like, so the women comics I know, they definitely speak freely on stage. If they write their materials so that they can get away with saying what they want to say without alienating an audience, I think some female comics might take that on more than male comics,
Right.
um, because there is this constant, like, oh God, women aren't funny, feminism's not funny, blah blah blah. I frankly think a lot of that's flying out the window, because it is funny. Feminists are funny, and all kinds of comedy about women's experiences is hysterical, and there's such great comics out there making it funny, as well as hearing the sound of women laughing more and more in the audience. Like, I think the audience, there's more female comics, and thus there are more women in the audience, and that makes for a higher demand, and then you can, increasingly say what you want.
We've been talking a lot about women of comedy for our upcoming issue, and we've actually found that there is some reluctance to talk about women in comedy specifically. Why do you think that is?
I had a pause myself,
Yeah.
and I think it's just because there's a fear of perpetuating that there's a ghetto that is women in comedy. And so probably, we all just want to be like, we're in comedy.
Yeah.
And nobody does you don't do a thing with, not you personally, one doesn't see a comedy special called Guys in Comedy.
No.
And it's just that thing of, like, it's a band because there's guys in it, and then you go, like, it's a girl band
Yeah.
because there's chicks in it. So I think, there's the desire to have that drop away, and so you don't want to participate in keeping that going. But that said, there are certainly shared experiences that could fall under the title Women in Comedy.
Do you think there's an advantage to speaking about it? About, like, the disparity between men and women?
Yes, occasionally. I think there's probably there's certainly an advantage to women speaking amongst themselves, just to let some steam off.
Yeah.
I think there is definitely can be an advantage to men hearing the what the differences are. Like I remember a couple months ago, a woman comic was let off of a lineup because the manager told her there were too many women, which everyone
Yeah, I heard about that.
And, like, I feel like every woman knew it meant there were two.
Yeah.
Too many means that they've already got the one.
Yeah.
You know, I've certainly been asked without the person having any self-awareness of that if I would do a spot because they need some women because they don't have any.
Yeah.
And like increasingly I would kind of like to answer, oh, well then why don't you just do an all-male show and just call it that?
Yeah.
Or just say like, I'll be on I'd love to do it if there's more than one woman on it.
Yeah.
Just to like, force the issue a bit, because I don't care what anybody says, like, more women in the workplace or more women on, on the sports field or at the comedy club does begin to change the overall thing.